The rain that night tasted of metal and ice, a cold bite that settled deep into my bones. I stood beneath the flickering streetlight, its sickly yellow glow painting weak puddles on the slick pavement outside the private hospital. My hand, cold and trembling, pressed against the small swell of my stomach. For months, the life within me had grown, and with it, my amiga scent, now richer, sweeter, a dangerous beacon in the night. Suppressant sat heavy in my pocket, a forgotten weight. I hadn't taken one today. They cost too much. Everything cost too much. Annie Chen, my landlady, had already delivered her ultimatum, her voice devoid of warmth, echoing the chill of the rain. Rent's due. Shi Yang. No exceptions. My part-time cafe job, a flimsy lifeline, snapped weeks ago. Whispers had followed me, hushed and sharp. The pregnant Omega, until the manager, face tight with regret, handed me my final pay. My parents, their faces blurring in my memory, had stopped answering my calls the day I confessed the truth. I carried a child, marked by an alpha who vanished before the test strip even dried, a temporary, careless claim. Don't worry, I whispered, my voice thin against the drumming rain, my fingers tracing the gentle curve beneath my shirt. Papa will figure something out tonight. I had a plan, a desperate, ugly thing, but a plan nonetheless. The Jung Corporation Hotel's banquet hall glowed gold and crystal in the distance, a beacon of another world. Wealth hummed in the air, thick and cloying like an expensive perfume. I kept my head down, a phantom in the bustling lobby, as I slipped inside. My cleanest shirt, ironed until the fabric felt stiff against my skin, clung to me. A borrowed coat, too large, swallowed my thin frame, its ruffles scratching my neck. I didn't belong here. The polished marble floors reflected the dazzling chandeliers, each sparkle a reminder of the chasm between their world and mine. But rich alphas did. My plan was simple, shameful, and desperate. Find a wealthy alpha, make him believe the child was his, and secure enough money to survive. Omegas had done worse to protect their pups. I repeated the mantra in my head, a desperate attempt to quiet the gnawing shame, over and over. At the center of the glittering room he stood, Jun Han. The name alone carried the weight of power. Tall, a silhouette of impeccable black suit against the backdrop of lesser men. His presence was cold, commanding, a still point in the swirling opulence. His pheromones, tightly reined, spoke of control. Power wrapped in silk. CEO, 32. Unmarried, ruthless in business, perfect. I steadied myself, each breath a shallow intake of the perfumed air. I took a step, then another, deliberately allowing a faint trace of my amiga scent to escape, a whisper of sweetness into the controlled atmosphere. His sharp gaze snapped to me, swift and unnerving. Who let you in? His voice was a low growl, dangerous, cutting through the murmur of polite conversation. I lowered my lashes, letting them tremble just so. I needed to see you. I don't know you. His eyes, dark and piercing, held no hint of recognition. You do? I lied softly, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. You just don't remember. Jun Han studied me, a careful, almost predatory assessment. His nostrils flared, a barely perceptible movement. Something shifted in his expression, confusion, recognition, or was it just irritation? I couldn't tell. I had to press forward before my nerve deserted me. I'm pregnant, I said, the words tumbling out, raw and fragile. For months, silence crashed between us, a sudden, heavy blanket. The clinking of glasses, the distant laughter, all faded into a muffled hum. And his voice, when it came, was icy, devoid of any emotion. I forced tears into my eyes, willing them to well up, to spill. It's yours. Gasps rippled from nearby guest. A wave of shock and scandal. Jun Han's gaze sharpened, turning into a blade that seemed to flame me open. Explain. The single word was a command, an expectation of immediate surrender. I had rehearsed this. A charity gala months ago. Too much wine. A private room. A night forgotten. The story was ready, polished, plausible enough for a man who might have many such forgotten nights. But before I could speak, Jun Han stepped closer, too close. The subtle scent of his alpha pheromones, previously restrained, now pressed in, a heavy weight. He inhaled near my neck, a slow, deliberate draw. I froze, every muscle locking. The air around us crackled with an unspoken tension. His hand shot out, gripping my wrist. Not cruel, but firm and unyielding hold. Come with me. He dragged me, not roughly, but with an undeniable force, out of the ballroom, through private corridors that twisted and turned until we reached a quiet, insulated office. The heavy oak door swung shut behind us, severing us from the world outside, trapping us in a sudden, suffocating intimacy. The air thickened, growing heavy with unspoken questions, with the clash of our scents. Jun Han released my wrist, the sudden absence of his touch a cold shock, and turned slowly, his eyes, dark and unreadable, fixed on me. You think I don't remember who I've touched? His voice was low, laced with a dangerous edge, a challenge that stripped away my carefully constructed facade. My heart plummeted, a lead weight sinking in my chest. The lie, so carefully crafted, felt flimsy, transparent. He continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper, yet each word resonated with chilling clarity. I haven't slept with anyone in over a year. The lie collapsed in my throat, a bitter, metallic taste. My shoulders slumped. I bowed my head, unable to meet his gaze. I'm sorry. The words were barely a breath, a confession of my desperation. Who is the father? His question hung in the air, sharp and insistent. I said nothing, my tongue thick and heavy. The truth, if I even knew it, felt too fragile to utter. Jun Han stepped forward again, closing the distance between us. This time, his expression shifted. Not anger, but something else. Focus. A deep, unsettling concentration. You're not lying, he murmured, his voice softer, almost thoughtful. I blinked, confused. My head snapped up, meeting his intense gaze. The child, he clarified, his eyes unwavering. You're lying about me being careless, but you're not lying about me. My pulse hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum. What are you talking about? He studied my face, his gaze lingering on the curve of my cheek, the shape of my eyes, as if searching for a forgotten detail, a missing piece of a puzzle. 6 months ago, Jun Han said slowly, each word deliberate, I was drugged at a negotiation dinner. I left before security could trace who was responsible. I woke up in a private suite, alone. I assumed nothing happened. My breath hitched. 6 months ago. The same time frame. I remembered waking up in a private suite, alone, a gaping hole in my memory. A hazy, disorienting warmth. I had thought it a mistake. A one-night encounter blurred by heat and alcohol, a regrettable lapse in judgment. Jun Han's eyes darkened, the focus in them intensifying. I've been searching for the Omega from that night. The room tilted. The air grew thin, hard to breathe. The cold rain outside, the desperate plan, the looming eviction all faded into a distant hum. Only his words, his gaze, remained. You remember? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Not clearly, he admitted, a rare crack in his controlled facade. But I remember a scent. Not sweet like most Omegas. Something sharper. Like rain. My own scent. It had always been described that way. Like rain. Jun Han stepped closer, until our breaths mingled, warm and intimate. His voice softened for the first time, losing its edge, becoming something entirely new. It's you. I shook my head weakly, the confession tearing from me. No. I came here to trick you. I know. His eyes held mine, unwavering. I was going to lie. I know. Tears, real ones this time, finally spilled down my cheeks, hot tracks against my cold skin. I'm sorry. I was desperate. The shame, a suffocating weight, pressed down on me. Jun Han watched me cry for a long moment, his expression unreadable, yet devoid of judgment. Did you want to keep the child? He asked, his voice low and steady. I clutched my stomach protectively, my hand trembling. Of course, even alone. Yes. The single word was fierce, unwavering. Jun Han exhaled slowly, a long, controlled breath. Then don't be alone. I looked up, startled, my eyes wide and terror-filled. I don't like being manipulated, Jun Han said calmly, his voice regaining a hint of its earlier firmness. But I hate being robbed of responsibility even more. He reached forward hesitantly, his movement slow, deliberate, giving me time to pull away, to reject his touch. But I couldn't. I stood frozen, watching as his palm settled gently over my stomach. A warmth spreading through the thin fabric of my shirt. A faint echo in the bond mark that had never fully faded. A ghost of a connection I hadn't understood. His voice, when he spoke again, was firm, resolute. If this child is mine and I believe it is, then I will provide. Not out of obligation. Out of choice. My lips trembled. A wave of emotion I couldn't contain washing over me. You don't even know me. Then I'll learn. Outside, the rain continued to fall, a steady, rhythmic drumming against the window panes. But inside the quiet office, something steadier began to form, not a trap, not a lie, but a fragile, unexpected beginning. Jun Han's thumb brushed a tear from my cheek, a surprisingly gentle touch. Next time, he said softly, his gaze holding mine, just ask. A broken laugh escaped me, a watery sound that mingled with the lingering scent of rain. For the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. The silence stretched, thick with the weight of his words, of his touch. My mind, still reeling from the sudden shift in his demeanor, struggled to reconcile the ruthless CEO with the man whose thumb had just brushed a tear from my cheek. The warmth of his hand still lingered on my stomach, a phantom sensation, a promise I hadn't dared to dream. What happens now? My voice was barely a whisper, raw and fragile. Jun Han's hand dropped from my face, but his gaze remained fixed on me, intense and unwavering. He moved away, turning to face the vast cityscape through the floor-to-ceiling window of his office. The rain still lashed against the glass, blurring the distant lights into streaks of gold and white. First, he began, his back still to me, his voice regaining its controlled, authoritative tone. We established the facts. You claim you were drugged, woke up alone, with no memory of the night. I experienced the same. The timelines align. He paused, turning slightly, his profile sharp against the glowing city. The child is for months developed. That places conception roughly 6 months ago. Again, the timelines align with that night. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I didn't know you were drugged. I just woke up confused. I thought. You thought it was a one-night stand with the careless alpha, he finished for me, his voice flat. And then, when your situation became dire, you sought out the most powerful alpha you could find and attempted to claim him as the father. Desperate act. The shame clawed at me again, hot and stinging. I averted my gaze, my cheeks flushing. I know it was wrong. I never meant to hurt anyone. He finally turned fully, stepping away from the window and moving towards his large, polished desk. He pressed a button on an intercom. Secretary, please cancel all my remaining engagements for the evening. Clear my schedule for tomorrow morning. As well, I'll be in my private residence. He released the button, his eyes returning to me. We need to confirm paternity, he stated, his voice calm, pragmatic. A DNA test. It's standard procedure in such cases. I understand. I mumbled, my hands instinctively going to my stomach again. The thought of needles, of medical procedures, made my already churning stomach clench. You'll move into one of my private residences tonight, he continued, as if discussing a business acquisition. It's safer for you there, away from curious eyes. His gaze flickered towards the door, then back to me. A subtle warning, and away from the conditions you're currently enduring. I understand, I mumbled, my hands instinctively going to my stomach again. The thought of needles, of medical procedures, made my already churning stomach clench. You'll move into one of my private residences tonight, he continued, as if discussing a business acquisition. It's safer for you there, away from curious eyes. His gaze flickered towards the door, then back to me, a subtle warning. And away from the conditions you're currently enduring. My apartment. I started, then trailed off. The peeling paint, the dim lights, and each Chen's demands, it all felt miles away, part of a life I was quickly outgrowing. We'll arrange for your belongings to be moved tomorrow, he said, dismissing my concerns with a wave of his hand. Consider this a temporary arrangement until the paternity is confirmed and we can discuss a more permanent solution. A permanent solution. The words hung in the air, loaded with unspoken implications. I looked at him, at his unyielding posture, his sharp, intelligent eyes. He wasn't offering charity. He was offering responsibility, a carefully calculated response to an unexpected complication. Why are you doing this? The question escaped before I could stop it, laced with a tremor of disbelief. You could have just thrown me out, denied everything. A muscle twitched in his jaw. Because I remember a scent, a unique one, and because my instincts, which have never failed me in business, tell me you are not entirely fabricating this story. He paused, his gaze softening almost imperceptibly. And because I do not shirk my responsibilities, particularly when it concerns a potential heir to my family name. Heir, the word resonated in the cavernous office, cold and heavy. It wasn't about me, not really. It was about the child, about his legacy. Still, a strange sense of relief washed over me. At least he wasn't dismissing us entirely. I have a doctor, I offered, remembering Dr. Wei Rong, her kind eyes and gentle hands. She's a beta. Very good. Excellent, Jun Han nodded, already moving towards a sleek, minimalist phone on his desk. I'll have my assistant contact her in the morning. We'll arrange for a comprehensive medical evaluation and the necessary test at a facility of my choosing. He picked up the phone, his fingers flying across the keypad. And I'll need her records. All of them. He spoke into the receiver, his voice low and efficient, giving instructions that were clearly understood without needing further explanation. I stood there, feeling like a small, insignificant cog caught in the gears of his meticulously organized world. Within minutes, a discreet security detail arrived, two imposing alphas in dark suits. Jun Han gave them a terse command, and they ushered me out of the office, through a separate, private exit I hadn't noticed before, and into a waiting black car. The plush leather seat swallowed me, and the vehicle glided silently through the rain-slicked streets. The private residence was a penthouse suite, high above the city, a stark contrast to my cramped apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking panoramic view of the glittering metropolis, a tapestry of light and shadow. The air inside was warm, subtly scented with a calming, neutral pheromone diffuser. A young beta woman, impeccably dressed, greeted me at the door. Mr. Shi Yang, she said with a polite bow. I am Ms. Lin, Mr. Jun Han's personal assistant. Please, come in. A light meal has been prepared for you, and your room is ready. Jun Han will join you shortly. I felt utterly out of place, a stray cat in a palace. The sheer opulence was overwhelming. My room was larger than my entire apartment, with a king-sized bed, soft lighting, and a bathroom that looked like it belonged in a five-star resort. I sat on the edge of the bed, the luxurious mattress too soft, too yielding. My borrowed coat still felt rough and scratchy against my skin. The scent of rain, my own subtle omega scent, seemed lost in the vastness of the space. Jun Han arrived a little while later, accompanied by Ms. Lin. He had changed into more casual, though still expensive, clothes, a dark cashmere sweater, and tailored trousers. His presence, even in this more relaxed attire, was just as commanding. Are you comfortable? He asked, his gaze sweeping over me, taking in my disheveled appearance. Yes, I managed, my voice still feeling small. It's a lot. Ms. Lin stepped forward, holding a sleek tablet. Mr. Shi Yang, these are the documents for your temporary stay. They outline the terms of residence, confidentiality agreements, and medical consent forms. Please review them at your leisure. I will return in the morning to assist with any questions. Confidentiality agreements. Of course, this was Jun Han. Every aspect of his life, especially something as potentially scandalous as a surprise pregnancy, would be meticulously controlled. I've also scheduled your initial consultation with Dr. Lee, our chief obstetrician, for tomorrow morning, Jun Han added. She's highly respected. She'll perform a thorough examination, including the necessary samples for the paternity test. Thank you, I said, though my stomach churned at the thought of more doctors, more tests. Ms. Lin excused herself, leaving Jun Han and me alone in the vast living area. The silence returned, more comfortable now, but still laced with a fragile uncertainty. Eat something, he prompted, gesturing towards a small table laden with delicate dishes. You look pale. I hadn't realized how hungry I was until the aroma of warm broth and freshly baked bread hit me. I walked over, hesitant, and picked up a small, savory pastry. It crumbled in my mouth, rich and flavorful. It's good, I murmured, surprised. He watched me, his expression unreadable. We need to talk about the night in question, Shi Yang. Everything you remember. No detail is too small. I swallowed, the pastry suddenly tasting like ash. I don't remember much. It's all hazy. I tried to recall, pushing past the fog. I was at a charity gala with some friends. I had a few drinks. Not many, I usually don't drink much. Then someone offered me another glass. It tasted a little off, I think. Sweet, but also metallic. Jun Han's eyes narrowed. Metallic, like the rain tonight. I nodded, a shiver running down my spine. Yes, exactly like that. After that, things got blurry. I remember feeling warm, very warm, and a little disoriented. I remember someone leading me away, a hand on my back. I thought it was one of my friends. Did you see their face? I shook my head no. It was dark, and I wasn't really focused. I just followed, and then I woke up in a strange bed, alone. My clothes were on the floor. I felt violated, but also confused, like I'd been asleep for a long time. I was scared. I just wanted to leave. And you left without investigating? He asked, a hint of suspicion in his tone. I didn't know what to investigate, I admitted, my voice thick with the memory of that fear. I was an omega, alone in a strange place. I just wanted to forget it ever happened. He leaned back against the plush sofa, his gaze distant. I woke up with a pounding headache. My suit was rumpled. There was a faint scent of an unfamiliar omega in the room, but it was quickly fading. I assumed it was a setup, a deliberate attempt to compromise me. My security team conducted a discreet investigation, but they found nothing conclusive. The person responsible for drugging me was meticulous. So, someone drugged both of us? I asked, the realization dawning on me. But why? To discredit me. To force a compromise, he mused, his brow furrowed in thought. A business rival, perhaps. Or someone trying to gain leverage. He looked at me again, his expression softening slightly. You were simply collateral damage, Shi Yang, an unfortunate victim caught in a larger scheme. The thought was chilling. I wasn't just a desperate omega trying to survive. I was a pawn in someone else's game. And the child growing inside me was the unexpected consequence. This changes things, I said, more to myself than to him. It does, he agreed. The paternity test will confirm the connection. Once confirmed, we will make a public statement. A carefully worded one, of course, to manage the narrative. A public statement. My eyes widened. The thought of my face, my pregnancy, splashed across headlines, my life laid bare for public consumption. sent a fresh wave of panic through me. There will be speculation, Shi Yang, he stated, his voice firm. The media will dig. It's better to control the story than to let it control us. We will announce that we were involved in a private, discreet relationship that resulted in a pregnancy, and that we are now committed to raising the child together. A relationship. The word felt foreign, forced. We were strangers, bound by a single, hazy night, and an unexpected consequence. A necessary facade, he clarified, his gaze unwavering. For the sake of the child, and for my reputation, you will move in here permanently. Your needs, and the child's, will be met. You will have access to the best medical care, education, everything. In return, you will maintain discretion and uphold our shared narrative. He was offering me a gilded cage. Security, luxury, protection, but at the cost of my freedom, my identity. I would be Jun Han's Omega, the mother of his heir, a role carefully constructed and presented to the world. What about me? I asked, my voice small, vulnerable. What about what I want? His expression remained impassive. What do you want, Shi Yang? Beyond the safety and well-being of your child. The question hung in the air, vast and daunting. What did I want? For so long, my only desire had been survival, to keep this tiny life safe. Now, with the immediate threat lifted, other long-buried desires began to stir. To be seen, not just as an Omega, not just as a mother, but as me. To have a choice, a voice. I don't know, I admitted. The truth raw. I haven't had the luxury of wanting anything beyond survival for a long time. He studied me. A flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Then we will figure that out. But for now, this is the arrangement. You agree? I looked around the opulent room, at the city lights twinkling outside, at the powerful, enigmatic man who held my future in his hands. It wasn't the romantic fantasy I had once foolishly dreamt of. It was a cold, hard bargain, but it was a bargain that offered protection, security, and a future for my child. I agree, I said, my voice firmer this time, for my child. A faint, almost imperceptible nod from him. Good. Now, you should rest. Tomorrow will be a long day. He stood, a silent signal of dismissal. I watched him walk towards a different part of the penthouse, presumably his own private quarters. The door clicked softly shut behind him, leaving me alone once more, surrounded by luxury, but still isolated. The next morning, the world moved with Jun Han's efficiency. Ms. Lin arrived promptly, guiding me through the extensive medical forms and confidentiality agreements. Dr. Li, a stern but kind beta woman with intelligent eyes, conducted the examination at a pristine private clinic, her movements precise and professional. She confirmed the pregnancy was healthy, the baby growing well. The blood samples for the paternity test were taken, a small prick, a silent promise. A team of movers, discreet and efficient, emptied my old apartment, carefully packing my meager belongings into boxes and transporting them to the penthouse. Annie Chen, when she saw the expensive moving van, had gaped, her stern expression replaced by a mixture of shock and reluctant respect. Days bled into a week. I settled into a strange routine. Mornings were for prenatal yoga sessions in the penthouse gym or consultations with Drive-Out Li. Afternoons were spent in the sprawling library, reading, or simply gazing out at the city, trying to make sense of my new reality. Jun Han was a constant, yet distant, presence. He would appear for meals, his conversations mostly pragmatic, discussing logistics, future plans for the child, or updates on the paternity test. He never asked about my feelings, my fears, or the lingering trauma of that night. One evening, a week after I moved in, we sat across from each other at the long dining table. The silence between us was heavier than usual. The results are in, he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. My breath hitched, my fork clattered against the plate, and his eyes, dark and unreadable, met mine across the expanse of the table. The DNA confirms it. Shi Yang. The child is mine. His eyes, dark and unreadable, met mine across the expanse of the table. The DNA confirms it. Shi Yang. The child is mine. A strange mix of relief and terror washed over me. Relief that the uncertainty was over. Terror at the enormity of what that meant. So, I managed, my voice trembling. What happens now? Now, he stated, his gaze unwavering, we begin the next phase. The public announcement will be made tomorrow. My family will be informed. And you, Shi Yang, will begin your new life as the mother of my child. He rose from the table, signaling the end of the conversation. My new life. The words echoed in the vast, silent dining room, a promise and a prison. I was no longer just Shi Yang, the desperate Omega. I was Jun Han's Omega, carrying his heir. And the weight of that truth felt heavier than any rain. The next morning, the world exploded. News articles, carefully crafted by Jun Han's public relations team, announced our discreet relationship, and the impending arrival of his heir. My face, a carefully selected, flattering photo, was plastered across every major news outlet. The comments, even on the carefully curated forums, were a mix of fawning admiration for Jun Han, curiosity about me, and the inevitable, cruel whispers about omegas and their opportunism. My phone, a device I rarely used, began to ring incessantly. Unknown numbers, old friends, even my parents, their names flashing on the screen. A stark reminder of the life I had left behind. I ignored them all. Jun Han had provided me with a new, secure phone, but the old one felt like a tether to a past that no longer existed. Jun Han's family, a formidable assembly of alphas and betas, arrived within days. They were cold, scrutinizing, their gazes dissecting me, evaluating my worthiness to carry their heir. His mother, a regal alpha woman with eyes as sharp as her son's, was particularly critical. "So, you are the omega who claims to carry my son's child," she stated, her voice like polished steel. During our first formal introduction, we sat in a lavish drawing room, the air thick with tension and the scent of various alpha pheromones. "Yes, madam," I replied, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "The paternity test has confirmed it," she scoffed, a delicate, dismissive sound. "Tests can be manipulated. You are a clever one, aren't you? To ensnare my son like this." Jun Han, who had been observing silently, finally spoke. "Mother, that is enough. Shi Yang is under my protection. The circumstances of our meeting were unusual, but the child is undeniably mine." His voice was low, firm, a clear warning. His mother's lips thinned, but she did not press the issue further. The message was clear. I was tolerated only because of the child, and because Jun Han decreed it. Life became a strange ballet of luxury and isolation. I had everything I could possibly need, and yet I felt a profound sense of loneliness. Jun Han remained distant, a benevolent but detached provider. He ensured my every need was met, but he rarely shared anything of himself. Our conversations were polite, functional, devoid of personal connection. My belly grew, a visible testament to the undeniable truth. The baby kicked, a fluttering butterfly at first, then stronger, more insistent thumps. Those moments, when I felt the life within me, were the only times I felt truly connected, truly alive. One afternoon, I found myself in the penthouse's expansive art studio, a room I hadn't known existed. Canvases, brushes, and tubes of paint lay scattered, as if someone had been interrupted mid-creation. A half-finished landscape, vibrant and expressive, stood on an easel. It was a stark contrast to the minimalist, controlled aesthetic of the rest of the penthouse. Jun Han walked in, catching me by surprise. He rarely ventured into this part of the residence. He stopped, his gaze falling on the painting. "You paint?" I asked, surprised, realizing the painting must be his. He nodded, a slight, almost imperceptible movement. "Sometimes. It helps to clear my mind." It was the first personal revelation he had offered, a small crack in his impenetrable facade. I looked at the painting again, seeing it with new eyes. It was powerful, full of raw emotion, a wildness that belied his controlled exterior. "It's beautiful," I said softly. "It doesn't look like something you would paint." A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips, a fleeting glimpse of another man beneath the CEO. "Perhaps you don't know me as well as you think, Shi Yang." The air between us shifted, a subtle current of unspoken curiosity. It was the closest we had been to a genuine connection since that night in his office. "Perhaps," I replied, meeting his gaze. "But then, you don't know me either." He looked at me, truly looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something beyond duty, beyond responsibility in his eyes. A question, a nascent curiosity. "Then tell me," he said, his voice low, almost a challenge. "Tell me about yourself, Shi Yang. Beyond the omega, beyond the mother of my child. Who are you?" The question hung in the air, vast and inviting. It was an opening, a hesitant step towards something real, something beyond the carefully constructed facade we had built. My heart fluttered, not with fear, but with a cautious hope. The gilded cage might have a door after all. His question hung in the air, a fragile bridge between us. It wasn't a demand, nor was it a judgment, but an invitation, soft and unexpected. For months, I had been defined by my circumstances, the pregnant omega, the desperate lie, the mother of Jun Han's heir. To be asked who I was, beyond those labels, felt like a breath of fresh air after years spent underwater. "Who am I?" I repeated, the words tasting strange on my tongue, like a forgotten language. I looked around the art studio, at the vibrant, half-finished landscape on the easel, at the tubes of paint scattered on the floor, each color holding a potential world. I used to draw. Not like this. I gestured to his painting, but sketches. Mostly nature. Flowers, trees. I liked to capture the fleeting moments. He watched me, his expression still attentive. "You stopped Life got in the way, I admitted, a bitter taste in my mouth. My parents, they valued practicality. Art was a hobby, a distraction. When I went to university, I studied economics. It was supposed to be a stable path. I laughed, a short, humorless sound. Look how stable that turned out. A faint, almost imperceptible frown creased his brow. Economics. You have a degree. Almost. I dropped out when I realized I was pregnant. Couldn't afford tuition anymore, and the pressure from home was too much. I traced a pattern on the dusty floor with my foot. They didn't want a pregnant Omega bringing shame to the family name, especially not one without a proper alpha by her side. Your parents, he said, his voice measured, they disowned you? More like they stopped answering my calls. I corrected, a dull ache in my chest. It was easier for them to pretend I didn't exist, to protect their reputation. I met his gaze, a challenge in my eyes. I know a thing or two about protecting reputation, Jun Han. A flicker of something understanding, perhaps, or a subtle acknowledgement of shared experience passed through his eyes. My family is no different. Appearances are paramount. Weakness, even perceived, is unacceptable. He walked over to a small wooden pallet, picking up a brush. So, you drew flowers. What kind? Lilies, I said immediately, a warmth spreading through me at the memory. White lilies. They symbolize purity, rebirth. And orchids. Delicate, but resilient. He dipped the brush into a dollop of white paint, his movements precise. I prefer landscapes. The raw power of nature. Mountains, oceans. Things that endure. But even mountains erode, I countered softly. And oceans can be calm or destructive. Nothing truly endures unchanged. He paused, the brush hovering over the canvas. He turned to me, a thoughtful expression on his face. An interesting perspective. The air shifted again, less formal, more conversational. We stood in the studio for a long time, talking about art, about life, about the strange ways fate had intertwined our paths. I found myself telling him about the small joys of my old life, the scent of rain on concrete, the taste of freshly brewed coffee, the quiet satisfaction of a perfectly balanced sketch. He, in turn, spoke of the pressures of his corporate world, the relentless pursuit of perfection, the loneliness that came with power. It was the first time I felt like he truly saw me, not just as a vessel for his child, but as an individual with thoughts, feelings, and a past. And I, in turn, began to see glimpses of the man beneath the impenetrable CEO, a man who found solace in the wild beauty of a painted landscape. Days turned into weeks. The public announcement, once a source of dread, had settled into a new normal. The media, after an initial frenzy, had largely moved on to other scandals, though we remained a recurring, if less sensational, headline. Jun Han's family, while still wary, seemed to have accepted my presence, albeit grudgingly. They had witnessed Jun Han's unwavering commitment to the child, and in their world, that held immense weight. My pregnancy progressed. The fluttering butterfly became a vigorous dancer, and my belly grew rounder, more prominent. Doctor Lee assured me everything was perfectly healthy. I had regular checkups, ate nutritious meals prepared by the penthouse chef, and slept in a bed so comfortable it felt like floating on clouds. The physical discomforts of pregnancy were still there, but the gnawing fear of not being able to provide for my child had vanished. One evening, Jun Han found me in the nursery, a room that had been meticulously decorated by an interior designer. Soft blues and greens adorned the walls, and a beautiful wooden crib stood in the center. I was arranging tiny clothes in a drawer, marveling at their softness. You seem content, he observed, leaning against the doorframe, his arms crossed. I admitted, turning to him, a small smile playing on my lips. I never thought I'd have this. A safe place. Beautiful things for the baby. It's more than I ever imagined. He walked further into the room, picking up a tiny wear-upon booty. You once said you wanted more than just survival. Have you found it? I paused, thinking. I've found peace and gratitude, but I still want to be useful. I don't want to just be the mother of your child. I want to contribute. How so? He asked, his gaze sharp, assessing. I don't know yet, I confessed. But I've been thinking about my economics degree, about the charity gala where we met. There are so many Omegas like I was, who fall through the cracks, who are desperate, vulnerable. My voice grew passionate. What if there was a way to help them? A foundation, perhaps, to provide resources, support, education, so they don't have to make the choices I almost made. He listened intently, his expression unreadable. When I finished, the silence in the nursery was profound. A foundation for Omegas, he mused, his fingers still toying with the tiny booty. An interesting proposition. It aligns with my corporation's social responsibility initiatives. He looked up, his eyes meeting mine. You would lead it? I would want to, I said, a surge of excitement and a little fear running through me. I have the lived experience. I know what it's like. I could help design programs. Reach out to those who need it most. It would be a significant undertaking, he warned. It would require dedication, strategic planning, and a strong public presence. I'm dedicated, I stated, my voice firm. And I'm not afraid of hard work. And with your resources, your connections. He placed the booty back in the drawer, his hand brushing mine briefly, a spark. A fleeting connection. We can explore the feasibility, draw up a proposal, present it to the board. A thrill shot through me. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about purpose, about transforming my past pain into something meaningful. Thank you, Jun Han, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Thank you for seeing more than just a problem. He didn't reply, but his gaze held mine, a silent acknowledgement. As my due date approached, a new kind of intimacy began to blossom between us. He started joining me for my prenatal appointments, sitting quietly, listening intently to Dr. Lee's updates. He would place his hand on my belly, feeling the baby kick, a faint smile gracing his lips. His touch, once firm and pragmatic, became tender, almost possessive. One evening, during one of these quiet moments, as we sat on the sofa, his hand resting on my swollen belly, he spoke, his voice low, almost hesitant. Shi Yang about that night, the one where we met. My heart skipped a beat. What about it? I've been thinking, he continued, his thumb tracing slow circles on my skin. The investigation into who drugged me, it wasn't fully closed. My security team was unable to identify the culprit. But now, knowing you were there, that you also woke up disoriented, it paints a clearer picture. Someone wanted to harm you, I whispered, the old fear resurfacing. And they used you as a pawn, he finished. I won't let that stand. I've reopened the investigation, this time with a clearer target and a stronger motivation. His grip on my hand tightened. No one harms what's mine. His words, possessive and protective, sent a shiver down my spine. It wasn't just about his air anymore. It was about me. About us. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with unspoken emotions. His gaze met mine, dark and intense. The polished, controlled facade he usually presented had cracked, revealing a raw, primal instinct. Shi Yang, he began, his voice a low rumble. I want to remember that night. I swallowed, my mouth suddenly dry. I told you. I don't remember much. Not that night, he clarified, his eyes burning into mine. I want to create new memories. Memories that aren't tainted by manipulation or desperation. He leaned closer, his scent a subtle blend of cedar and something uniquely him, filling my senses. I want to know you, Shi Yang. Truly know you. My breath hitched. The intimacy of his words, the proximity of his body, was overwhelming. My omega instincts, long suppressed by fear and practicality, began to stir, a slow, insistent hum deep within me. Jun Han. My voice was barely a whisper. He didn't wait. His hand, which had been resting on my belly, moved upwards, tracing the curve of my waist, then my ribs, until his fingers brushed against the sensitive skin of my neck. His thumb stroked my jawline, sending shivers through me. His gaze dropped to my lips, lingering there. May I? He asked, his voice rough with an emotion I couldn't quite decipher. I nodded, unable to speak, my heart thundering in my chest. He leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away. But I didn't. I leaned into him, drawn by an invisible force, a hunger I hadn't realized I possessed. His lips, soft and hesitant at first, brushed against mine. It was a tentative touch, a question rather than a demand. I parted my lips slightly, inviting him in. He responded immediately, his kiss deepening, becoming more confident. His mouth moved over mine, slow and deliberate, exploring, tasting. His tongue, warm and seeking, traced the seam of my lips, and I opened for him without hesitation. Our tongues met, a soft, sensual dance. He explored the moist cavern of my mouth, tasting me, intertwining with my tongue in a slow, rhythmic movement. A low moan escaped my throat, a sound I hadn't known I could make. His free hand, which had been resting on my neck, moved to cup the back of my head, deepening the kiss, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. My hands, almost of their own accord, found their way to his chest, gripping the soft cashmere of his sweater. I could feel the powerful beat of his heart beneath my fingertips, a frantic rhythm mirroring my own. The world outside, the city lights, the rain, all faded into a distant hum. There was only him, his scent, his taste, the exquisite sensation of his lips on mine. He broke the kiss slowly, reluctantly, his forehead resting against mine. Our breaths mingled, ragged and uneven. His eyes, dark and heavy-lidded, searched mine. Shi Yang, he whispered, his voice hoarse. You taste like rain. A flush spread across my cheeks. And you, I managed, my voice breathless. You taste like control. And something wild. A small, genuine smile touched his lips, a rare sight. He kissed me again, this time with more urgency, more hunger. His hand moved from my head, sliding down my back, pressing me flush against his body. I could feel the hard planes of his chest, the warmth of his skin radiating through his clothes. The kiss deepened, becoming more insistent. His tongue plunged into my mouth, seeking, exploring, drawing a soft groan from me. I responded in kind, sucking gently on his tongue, a primal instinct taking over. The exchange of saliva, the soft sounds of our mouths working together, filled the quiet room. He pulled back just enough to trail kisses down my jawline to my neck, inhaling my scent, his nose brushing against my bond mark. A shiver, not of cold but of pure pleasure, ran through me. My knees felt weak, and I instinctively arched into his touch. "You smell incredible," he murmured, his voice a deep rumble against my skin. "So sweet." His lips found the sensitive skin beneath my ear, nipping gently, sending another jolt of pleasure through me. My omega instinct screamed for more, for closer contact, for the warmth of his alpha body against mine. "Jun Han," I gasped, my fingers tangling in his soft hair. He pulled back, his eyes still dark with desire, but a hint of self-control returning. He looked at my swollen belly, then back at my flushed face. "We should slow down," he said, his voice strained. "The baby." A wave of disappointment, sharp and unexpected, washed over me, quickly followed by a rush of understanding. He was right. We had to be careful. "Yes," I whispered, my own breath coming in ragged gasps. "The baby." He pulled me into a gentle hug, holding me close, his scent enveloping me, comforting and reassuring. His hand stroked my hair, then rested on my belly once more. "I didn't mean to rush you," he murmured against my hair. "It's just, I've waited a long time for this, for you." My heart softened, melting under his unexpected vulnerability. "I know," I whispered back, burying my face in his chest, inhaling his scent. "Me too." We stayed like that for a long time, simply holding each other, the unspoken emotions, the raw desire, simmering beneath the surface. The rain had stopped outside, and the city lights twinkled like distant stars. It wasn't the perfect, passionate encounter I might have imagined, but it was real. It was honest. And it was a beginning, a new kind of memory forged in the quiet intimacy of a shared embrace. The gilded cage was slowly, tentatively opening. The days that followed felt like a delicate dance, a slow, deliberate unfolding. The tension between us, once a sharp, almost painful awareness, softened into a comfortable hum. Jun Han, while still the formidable CEO to the world, revealed more of himself to me, layer by careful layer. He spoke of his childhood, a lonely existence defined by expectations and responsibilities, of the rare moments of rebellion he'd found in art. I, in turn, shared stories of my own, the small joys and quiet struggles that had shaped me. Our nightly ritual became a shared meal, followed by time in the living room, often with his hand resting on my belly, feeling the baby's movements. The kicks grew stronger, more defined, a constant, joyful reminder of the life we were creating. "He's certainly active tonight," Jun Han observed one evening. A faint smile touching his lips as a particularly vigorous kick made my entire belly jump. I corrected playfully, a warmth spreading through me. "I have a feeling it's a girl." He chuckled, a low, rich sound that sent a pleasant shiver down my spine. "A girl, then. What will we name her?" The question caught me off guard. We hadn't discussed names, to focus on the immediate future. The "we" in his sentence resonated deep within me, a subtle shift from my child to our child. "I've always liked May," I mused, picturing a tiny, delicate face. "It means beautiful plum blossom. Or perhaps something stronger, like Shulan, elegant orchid." "Shulan," he repeated, testing the sound. "Elegant orchid. I like it. Strong, yet graceful, like her mother." His gaze met mine, a warmth in his eyes that made my cheeks flush. The air between us, already thick with unspoken affection, grew charged. His hand, still on my belly, moved upwards, caressing my side, then tracing the curve of my neck. My breath hitched. The memory of our kiss in the art studio, the raw hunger, the sudden halt, lingered between us, an unfinished symphony. "Shi Yang," he murmured, his voice a low rumble. "Jun Han," I breathed, my eyes locked with his. He leaned in, slowly, deliberately, giving me time to retreat, to object, but I wanted him. My omega instincts thrummed, a desperate yearning for his touch, his scent, his presence. My body, heavy with pregnancy, felt alive, awakened by his proximity. His lips met mine, not with the hesitant tenderness of before, but with a confident, seeking hunger. It was a deep, consuming kiss, his mouth moving over mine with a practiced ease that stole my breath. My own lips parted, inviting him deeper, and his tongue plunged in, exploring the moist warmth of my mouth. I met him, my tongue dancing with his, a primal exchange of taste and sensation. He groaned, a low, guttural sound that vibrated through me. His hand left my neck, sliding down my back, pressing me flush against his hard body. I could feel the powerful muscles beneath his clothes, the heat radiating from him, enveloping me. My hands found their way to his shoulders, gripping him tightly, my fingers digging into the fabric of his shirt. The kiss deepened, becoming more urgent, more demanding. He tasted of desire, of a controlled passion finally unleashed. I felt my core clench, a delicious ache spreading through my lower belly. My nipples, already sensitive from pregnancy, hardened against his chest, sending a jolt of pleasure through me. He broke the kiss, pulling back just enough for his forehead to rest against mine. His breath was ragged, his eyes dark, pupils dilated with desire. "I want you, Shi Yang," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "I want to remember every inch of you." My own breath came in short, sharp gasps. "I want you to, Jun Han," I confessed, my voice trembling. The honesty felt liberating, terrifying. He didn't hesitate. He scooped me up into his arms, effortlessly, as if my pregnant weight were nothing. I gasped, clinging to him, my legs wrapping instinctively around his waist. He carried me through the lavish living room, down a quiet corridor, and into his bedroom. The room was dimly lit, soft ambient light casting long shadows. It was as minimalist and elegant as the rest of the penthouse, but with a subtle warmth, a personal touch I hadn't noticed before. He set me down gently on the edge of the large, king-sized bed, its plush mattress sinking beneath us. He knelt before me, his eyes never leaving mine. His hands went to the hem of my shirt, his fingers brushing against my skin, sending shivers through me. He slowly, deliberately pulled the fabric upwards, over my swollen belly, over my breast, until it came over my head. The cool air of the room kissed my exposed skin, and I shivered, but not from cold. His gaze lingered on my pregnancy-swollen breast, on the dark, engorged nipples. A low growl rumbled in his chest. "Beautiful," he whispered, his voice thick with admiration. He leaned in, his lips brushing against one taut nipple. A gasp escaped me, and I arched my back, offering myself to him. He took it, his mouth closing around the sensitive peak, sucking gently. Teasingly, a wave of pure, unadulterated pleasure washed over me, making my toes curl. My fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, urging him on. He suckled, drawing on my nipple with a soft, rhythmic pull, his tongue laving the sensitive skin. The wet heat of his mouth, the gentle tug, sent jolts of exquisite sensation straight to my core. My body trembled, a delicious tremor that started deep within me and spread outwards. I moaned, a raw, needy sound. He moved to the other breast, giving it the same devoted attention, alternating between gentle suckling and teasing nips. My hips began to move instinctively, a slow, rhythmic sway against the mattress, a silent plea for more. "You're so sensitive," he murmured against my skin, his breath hot and moist. He pulled back slightly, his eyes tracing the curve of my belly, the stretch marks that bloomed like delicate flowers on my skin. He leaned down, placing a soft kiss directly on my belly, then another, and another, until he had kissed every inch of my swollen expanse. Each touch was reverent, adoring, and I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. This wasn't just about desire. It was about acceptance, about love. He then rose, his gaze still locked with mine. He slowly unbuttoned his shirt, revealing a broad, muscular chest dusted with dark hair. His muscles flexed as he moved, a testament to his strength. He shucked off his trousers, then his boxers, revealing his erection, thick and powerful, already swollen with desire. It stood proud, a dark, veiny column, slick with pre-cum. My breath hitched. It was magnificent. My amiga instinct screamed, a deep, primal urge to take him, to be filled by him. He climbed onto the bed, hovering over me, his eyes burning into mine. His hands went to my trousers, his fingers deft as he unzipped them, pushing the fabric down my legs. I lifted my hips, helping him, eager to be free of the confining clothes. My panties followed, and then I was naked beneath him. My amiga scent blooming in the air, sweet and inviting. His eyes devoured my body, lingering on my full breast, my rounded belly. The dark tangle of hair between my legs, already slick with my own desire. "You are breathtaking, Shi Yang," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He lowered himself, his body pressing against mine, skin to skin. The heat of him, the hard planes of his chest against my soft breast, the thrilling pressure of his erection against my slick pussy, sent a jolt of pure ecstasy through me. I gasped, arching into him, desperate for more. He kissed me again, a deep, passionate kiss that left me breathless. His hand slid between my legs, his fingers finding my wet folds, gently parting them. He found my clit, already swollen and sensitive, and began to tease it with his thumb, a slow, rhythmic caress. A moan tore from my throat, raw and unrestrained. The sensation was exquisite, building slowly, deliciously. My hips bucked against his hand, urging him to go faster, to press harder. "Easy, little amiga," he murmured against my lips, his voice laced with amusement and desire. "We have all night." He continued to tease my clit, his fingers dancing over it, circling, pressing, rubbing. My pussy pulsed around his hand, wet and eager. I could feel my own fluids, slick and warm, coating his fingers. Then he slipped a finger inside me, slowly, carefully. My muscles clenched around him, tight and receptive. He pushed another finger in, stretching me gently, preparing me. The feeling of being filled, even by his fingers, was intoxicating. So tight, he groaned, his breath hot against my ear. So wet. He withdrew his fingers, and for a moment, I felt a pang of disappointment. But then he positioned himself between my legs, his hard erection pressing against my entrance. My pussy pulsed, aching for him, for the full, satisfying stretch. He looked into my eyes, a question in his gaze. "Are you ready, Shi Yang?" I nodded, unable to speak, my entire body trembling with anticipation. He pushed forward, slowly, deliberately. The tip of his cock breached my entrance, a delicious stretch. I gasped, a mixture of pain and pleasure. My body, unused to such a generous size, protested slightly, but my amiga instincts urged him on. He paused, letting me adjust, letting my body accept him. My muscles relaxed, stretching around him, accommodating his girth. "You're doing so well," he whispered, kissing my forehead, my nose, my lips. Then, with a slow, powerful thrust, he pushed deeper. I cried out, a sharp, surprised sound as he filled me completely. My pussy stretched taut, encompassing his entire length. It was a glorious, overwhelming sensation, a deep, primal connection. He held still for a moment, letting us both adjust, letting the sensations wash over us. I could feel every inch of him, deep inside me, pressing against my cervix. My body hummed with pleasure, a delicious ache spreading through my core. Then he began to move, a slow, rhythmic thrust, pushing and pulling out, filling me again and again. Each stroke was deliberate, powerful, sending waves of pleasure through me. The sounds of our bodies colliding, the wet asterisk slicking asterisk and soft asterisk squelching asterisk, filled the room. A symphony of desire. I wrapped my legs tighter around his waist, pulling him deeper, wanting more, needing more. My hands clutched his shoulders, my nails digging into his skin as I met his thrust, matching his rhythm. "Oh, Jun Han," I moaned, my voice raw with pleasure. He leaned down, kissing me fiercely, his tongue plunging into my mouth as his cock plunged into my pussy. The dual sensations were almost too much, overwhelming my senses. My clit, still sensitive from his earlier ministrations, rubbed against his pubic bone with every thrust, building the pressure, bringing me closer and closer to the edge. He began to thrust harder, faster, his breathing growing ragged. His balls slapped rhythmically against my ass with each powerful stroke, a rhythmic beat that drove me wild. I could feel the tension coiling tighter and tighter within me, a delicious, unbearable pressure building in my core. "I'm close," I gasped, my voice thin, desperate. "Come for me, little amiga," he growled, his voice thick with his own impending release. He pulled out almost completely, then thrust back in with a powerful, consuming stroke that sent me over the edge. My body convulsed around him, a wave of intense pleasure washing over me, making me cry out his name. My pussy clamped down on his cock, milking every last drop of sensation. I felt my orgasm bloom, a hot, liquid release that spread through every nerve ending, making my body tremble uncontrollably. He thrust a few more times, deep and hard, his own groans echoing in the room. Then, with a final, powerful push, he cried out, his body tensing, and he spilled his hot cum deep inside me, filling me with his warmth, his essence. He collapsed onto me, his weight a comforting pressure, his breath ragged against my neck. We lay there for a long moment, our bodies still joined, the echoes of our shared climax vibrating through us. "That was incredible," I whispered, my voice still shaky. He lifted his head, his eyes soft, heavy-lidded. A slow, contented smile spread across his face, a genuine, unguarded expression I hadn't seen before. "It was," he agreed, kissing my forehead gently. "More than I could have imagined." He shifted, pulling out of me with a soft, wet asterisk pop asterisk. A trickle of his cum, mixed with my own fluids, ran down my inner thigh, warm and intimate. He moved to lie beside me, pulling me close, spooning my body against his arm wrapped around my pregnant belly, his hand resting protectively over the life we had just reaffirmed. "I'm glad we didn't wait," I murmured, nestling deeper into his embrace. "Me too," he agreed, his voice thick with contentment. He kissed the top of my head. "Now, let's make some more memories, Shi Yang. Many, many more." The silence that followed was not empty, but full of warmth, of contentment, of a burgeoning love that had found its way through desperation and deception. The rain had stopped outside, and the city lights twinkled like promises. The gilded cage, I realized, was not a cage at all. It was a home, and in Jun Han's arms, I finally felt truly safe, truly desired, truly loved. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, I wasn't walking it alone. We were walking it together, two souls intertwined, ready to face whatever came next. The morning sun, filtered through the penthouse's sheer curtains, painted soft stripes across the bed. I woke slowly, a delicious languor clinging to my limbs. The scent of Jun Han, a warm, comforting blend of cedar and his unique alpha musk, enveloped me. His arm was still draped possessively over my waist, his hand resting gently on my swollen belly. A faint smile touched my lips. Last night had been a revelation, a raw, beautiful confirmation of something deeper than responsibility. I shifted slightly, and his arm tightened, pulling me closer. "Morning," he murmured, his voice thick with sleep, his lips brushing against the back of my neck. "Morning," I whispered back, my voice still husky. I turned in his embrace, meeting his gaze. His eyes, usually sharp and calculating, were soft, heavy-lidded with contentment. He kissed me, a slow, tender exploration that deepened into a hungry demand. His tongue plunged into my mouth, seeking, tasting, reminding me of the exquisite pleasure we had shared. My body, still humming from the night before, responded instantly, my hips instinctively arching into his. He broke the kiss reluctantly, his breath ragged. "We should get up," he said, though his eyes told a different story. "I have a board meeting this morning, and I have a foundation to plan," I countered playfully, my fingers tracing the line of his jaw. He chuckled, a low, rich sound. "Indeed, we have much to do." He kissed me once more, a quick, possessive peck. "But first, a proper breakfast. And then, we talk about the future." The future. The word no longer filled me with dread, but with a cautious optimism. Over breakfast, Jun Han, ever the strategist, laid out a detailed plan for the Omega Foundation. He had already contacted his legal team, his PR specialists, even his philanthropic advisors. "We'll call it the Rain Lily Foundation," he suggested, his gaze meeting mine across the polished table. "A tribute to your strength, Shi Yang, and a nod to your favorite flowers." A warmth bloomed in my chest. "I love it," I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "It's perfect. We'll start small," he continued, his voice precise and clear, focusing on a pilot program in the city's older residential blocks, providing housing assistance, prenatal care, and educational resources for vulnerable Omegas. "You'll head the board, and I'll provide initial funding and administrative support." "I want to be involved in every step," I insisted. "From the ground up. I want to meet the Omegas, understand their needs, build a community." He nodded. "That's what I expect. Your personal experience will be invaluable. We'll hire a dedicated team, of course, but your vision will guide us." The conversation flowed easily, a blend of his business acumen and my passion. For the first time, I felt like an equal partner, not just in raising a child, but in building something meaningful. As the weeks turned into months, the Rain Lily Foundation began to take shape. I threw myself into the work, meeting with social workers, visiting community centers, and interviewing potential staff. It was challenging, often heartbreaking work, but immensely rewarding. I met Omegas who reminded me of my past self, scared, alone, and without options. But now, with the foundation, we could offer them a lifeline, a chance at a better future. Jun Han, true to his word, provided unwavering support. He attended board meetings, offered strategic advice, and leveraged his extensive network to secure additional funding and partnerships. His presence, once intimidating, became a source of strength and reassurance. Our personal relationship deepened alongside our professional collaboration. The initial passion of that night evolved into a profound intimacy, a comfortable familiarity woven with threads of desire and affection. We discovered shared interest, laughed at silly things, and found solace in each other's presence during moments of stress. He still maintained his stoic demeanor in public, but in the privacy of our home, he was warm, attentive, and surprisingly tender. One evening, as we prepared for bed, he watched me as I carefully applied cream to my ever-expanding belly. "You're glowing," he said softly, his eyes tracing the curve of my skin. "It's the baby," I replied, a contented sigh escaping me. "And you?" He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder. His hands, large and warm, covered mine on my belly. "Our baby," he corrected, his voice a low rumble. He started to hum a soft, tuneless melody, and I leaned back into his embrace, feeling utterly cherished. The day our daughter was born was a blur of pain, fear, and overwhelming joy. Jun Han was by my side the entire time, his hand a constant, reassuring presence in mine. His stoic facade crumbled, replaced by a raw, primal concern that touched me deeply. "You're doing so well, Shi Yang," he whispered, his voice hoarse, as I pushed, my body screaming with effort. "Just a little more. Our baby is almost here." And then, with a final agonizing push, she arrived, a tiny, squalling bundle, covered in vernix, placed immediately on my chest. Her cry filled the delivery room, a sound more beautiful than any music. "Shulan," I whispered, tears streaming down my face as I gazed at her perfect, miniature features, She had a full head of dark hair and tiny, grasping fingers. Jun Han, his face streaked with tears, leaned over us, his hand trembling as he reached out to touch her tiny head. "Our Shulon," he murmured, his voice choked with emotion. He looked at me, his eyes shining with a love so profound it took my breath away. "Thank you, Shi Yang. Thank you for our daughter." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of sleepless nights, endless feedings, and the overwhelming, intoxicating scent of a newborn. Jun Han, to my surprise, was a natural father. He changed diapers with surprising efficiency, soothed Shulon with gentle humming, and spent hours simply gazing at her, a soft, adoring expression on his face. One afternoon, as I sat nursing Shulon in the nursery, Jun Han walked in, a small, velvet box in his hand. My heart gave a little flutter. He sat beside me on the rocking chair, his gaze tenderly taking in Shulon, then me. "Shi Yang," he began, his voice a little nervous, a rare thing for him. "When we first met, our circumstances were complicated. I offered you a solution, a partnership. But what we have built, what we have found is so much more than that." He opened the velvet box. Inside, nestled on a bed of satin, was a ring. Not a simple band, but an intricate design of white gold, with a delicate lily crafted from tiny diamonds and a single, luminous pearl at its center. "This pearl," he explained, his thumb gently caressing the ring, "represents purity and new beginnings. And the lily, it's for you, my rain lily." He looked into my eyes, his own filled with a deep, unwavering love. "I know it's not traditional. I know we haven't had the kind of courtship most couples do. But I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Shi Yang, as my wife, as the mother of my child, as my partner in everything. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in my eyes, blurring his handsome face. It wasn't a proposal born of desperation or obligation, but of genuine love, of a future he truly desired. "Yes," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Jun Han. 1,000 times, yes." He slid the ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly, a symbol of our journey, our love, our new beginning. He leaned in and kissed me, a soft, tender kiss that spoke of promises and forever. The wedding was a private affair, held in the penthouse's sprawling garden, surrounded by our closest friends and family. My parents, after much persuasion from Jun Han, had attended, their initial stiffness slowly melting as they witnessed the genuine affection between us. His mother, still formidable, offered a rare, genuine smile. Dr. Wei Rong and Ms. Lin, who had become dear friends, stood by my side as my bridesmaids. Annie Chen, now a regular visitor to the Rain Lily Foundation's community outreach programs, beamed from the front row. As Jun Han and I exchanged vows, looking into each other's eyes, I saw not just the powerful CEO, but the man who painted wild landscapes, the man who hummed to our daughter, the man who had seen beyond my desperation and found love. And he, I knew, saw in me not just the pregnant Omega, but the resilient woman, the passionate advocate, the loving mother and wife. Our life together was a tapestry woven with threads of love, work, and family. The Rain Lily Foundation flourished, becoming a beacon of hope for Omegas across the city. Shulong grew into a bright, curious child, her laughter filling our home with joy. One rainy afternoon, years later, I sat in the art studio, sketching a delicate orchid, while Jun Han painted a stormy seascape beside me. Shulong, now a spirited toddler, played quietly on the rug between us, surrounded by her colorful toys. "Mama, Papa," she called out, holding up a crayon drawing. It was a chaotic swirl of colors, but unmistakably a flower. We both smiled, our gazes meeting over her head. He reached out, taking my hand, intertwining our fingers. "Remember that night, Shi Yang?" he mused, his eyes twinkling. "The rain, the desperation, the lie." I chuckled, leaning my head on his shoulder. "I remember. I was so scared, so alone, and I was so oblivious," he admitted, a rare self-deprecating humor in his voice. Blind to what fate had already brought to my door. He squeezed my hand. "I'm glad you were desperate enough to find me, my love. It was the best lie you ever told." I looked at him, at our beautiful daughter, at the life we had built together. Brick by painstaking brick, love by tender love. The rain continued to fall outside, soft and steady, washing the city clean. But inside, in our home, surrounded by art, by laughter, by the quiet hum of our family, there was only warmth and light and an enduring, profound love. The beginning, born of desperation, had blossomed into a beautiful, unexpected forever.